When I was a child, I don't know that I would have identified it as entrepreneurial DNA, but I think I always had problem solving DNA. I think that is the trait that makes someone an entrepreneur, the biggest trait that makes someone an entrepreneur. This is my version of fun. It's so much fun solving problems, working with like-minded people, building products and tools for people that make their lives better, that solve problems for them. To me, that's the most exciting way I could possibly spend my time. Unfortunately, the biggest reason that most startups fail is no fault of the entrepreneur or the team. It is usually just wrong place, wrong time.
Hello everyone, I'm really excited, really hyped to have Chris Kaufman as a serial entrepreneur, mainly known for co-founding StockX, the stock market of things, allowing thousands of individuals to anonymously sell and buy verified clothes, electronics, and accessories. StockX is valued at nearly $4 billion and employing more than 1,500 people in global. Chris is a Detroit-based international entrepreneur with an impressive track record with previous ventures such as Quizzle and Upto, and currently Chris is the co-founder and chief operating officer at ArtClub. So you have a real interesting story. I want to also ask you about how you also went back to study, which for me was quite curious. But before that, Chris, if you can give a little insight to the audience, a little of your background story. You could go back the farthest when you were a child. Did you have like entrepreneurial DNA? And of course, thank you very much for being here and your valuable time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. When I was a child, I don't know that I would have identified it as entrepreneurial DNA, but I think I always had problem solving DNA. And I think that is the trait that makes someone an entrepreneur, the biggest trait that makes someone an entrepreneur, is the desire to look at a problem and come up with a solution, to figure out how things work. And from a very young age, it was just it's something that I was obsessed with. I wanted to figure out how things worked. I wanted to take apart my toys instead of play with them. Just a curiosity about the world and why things were the way they were. And I remember being that way even at 4 or 5 years old, and I'm not sure exactly where that came from or if it's genetic or but for as long as I can remember, I always kind of had that curiosity.
Wow, that's great. Were you a lemonade stand kind of kid? Were you just curious about life, and how has that accompanied you into your present and future?
Yeah, I mean, I like that like lemonade stand kind of kid because I always had some kind of idea, whether it was like I was making magnets that I was selling at one point. When I was probably 8, 9, 10 years old. I had a paper route when I was 10. There were always just random entrepreneurial ideas, like business ideas that I was working on that, 99% of them never came to fruition, but I was constantly designing business cards and had business plans when I was in middle school. And it was just something that was always really interesting to me and something that was a lot of fun.
And how would you define you as an entrepreneur profile? Let me explain. You've been, of course, creative officer, not operational. So, would you be more a creative kind of entrepreneur, operating? How would you define your entrepreneurial style?
Yeah, well, it's both, and I think to be a good entrepreneur and to be a good business operator, you really need to think about every angle of the business, and you need to be able to think about things from a high level. You need to be able to get down in the weeds, and the most important thing is really knowing when to kind of operate at those levels and when to zoom out and when to zoom back in. For me, being on the creative side has always felt like a really natural place for me. But that's because it's so much fun. Working on brand creative and product design, these things are just, I could do them all day. But I also really enjoy the operational and people side of the business too. And my biggest passion out of any of it is really the people side of the business and building really great teams and really great cultures and finding the right roles for people and creating opportunities and personal growth and development. And that's super important to me. And I really do think if you can figure that part out, if you can build the right founding team, you can hire the right people, everything else will fall into place.
That's awesome. And I just want to have a brief question from your backstory. Did you feel, like you say that people are very important, of course. I think the network effect is huge, successful. But did you feel that you had, like, your friends and your environment, family or friends, were like, had that entrepreneurial spirit, or did you feel like more of an outcast, black sheep kind of situation? And how was that evolving? Like more the social aspect.
I would say from an entrepreneurship perspective specifically, I felt like a little bit of a black sheep, but there's such a huge component to entrepreneurship, which is hard work, resilience, dedication, persistence. And from that perspective, I felt like I was right where I belonged. I came from a family where my dad and so many others worked for the auto industry and really instilled this, the importance of hard work in me from a very young age. And, I would watch my dad work 2-3 jobs at a time when we were kids to put food on the table. And I think I really understood and appreciated the value and importance of hard work from a very young age, which certainly stuck with me. And I think I was fortunate enough to be in a position as I grew up to be able to take some of those risks and to be able to build things on my own. And not everybody is given that opportunity. Because entrepreneurship comes with a great deal of instability and risk, and it's not something that everybody can necessarily, weather or tolerate. And I feel super fortunate that I've been able to put in the hard work and at the same time take some risks to be able to build some really cool things along the way.
I want to later ask you about the hard work and what is like. Well, I can ask you now. What do you think it motivates you to have so like hard work? Because like this is a really curious question I have. Like, of course, when you're starting, you have nothing to lose, more or less. Like you have this gasoline that prepares you. But once you've accomplished like this big and huge milestones professionally in your life, what do you think keeps on you having like that gasoline of hard work and keep creating new ventures? And have you identified it, or?
Well, I think there's really only two things that motivate people to work hard. One is necessity or fear, right? Like you have to work hard because you have to eat or take care of your family or you have no other choice. Or you just absolutely love what you do, and that motivates you to get up every day and to continue doing what you do. And for me, I absolutely love what I do, and this is my version of fun. And it's so much fun solving problems, working with like-minded people. building products and tools for people that make their lives better, that solve problems for them. To me, that's the most exciting way I could possibly spend my time, and that's what motivates me.
That's great. Getting to know you a little better, if we could talk about your previous ventures like Quizzle and Upto, maybe like a brief story of how you got into and the business models of each, and maybe some learnings that you got from those ventures.
Yeah, so Quizzle was a project that started when I was working at Quicken Loans, which was kind of my first real job right out of college. And we had started working on that as a project within marketing, ended up spinning it out into its own company, and it was essentially a financial services tool. Think Mint or Credit Karma competitor, credit report and score, identity protection, budgeting, things like that. Our angle on that was really being embedded within a mortgage company, looking at the number of leads that we were losing, basically because people were off by a few percentage points on debt to income ratios, or their credit score was just a little bit low, and the cost of those leads that we were throwing away was in some cases thousands of dollars. And we had this hypothesis that was, what if we could actually bring these leads into a platform where we could give people educational tools, we could incubate them, and essentially give them the tools they need to get mortgage ready. So we did that, and it worked very well. Spun that out into its own company, ran that for a couple of years. Ultimately, that company was acquired, and then Upto was one of these kind of serendipitous moments. And honestly, like almost every single business I've started was never anything I thought I was going to start. It's always these moments that kind of happen, and you see a problem, you see an opportunity, and you decide you're going to fix it, or you're at least going to try to fix it. And Upto was kind of the same thing, where me and my partners, we saw an opportunity to create a better calendar. And this was about 13 years ago at this point, and looking at the social landscape at the time, everything was either past tense or present tense. So people were talking about what they just did or what they were doing right now. There wasn't a good way to make future plans. And we decided that we were going to leverage the calendar to create a social network that people could actually plan around. And that was where the idea for Upto came from. And what we ended up learning pretty early in that business was that building a social platform on people's calendars was problematic, because nobody really had anything that interesting in their calendar to share. So we pivoted a bit and ended up building a public directory of about 35,000 calendars, where people could actually add interesting stuff to their calendars. So, every sports schedule, yoga classes, movie schedules, church bulletins, you name it. People could literally sign up for whatever organization calendar they wanted. They can drag and drop to their calendar. They could share with their friends. People could say they wanted to come along. So the idea was to create social traction around events that were in people's calendars. And, I think that was a really good example of, not trusting every assumption you make when you're going into business, when you're solving a problem. Because we felt pretty confident that people were going to go into their calendars, they were just going to freely share, we're going to get a lot of traction, it was going to work, and then come to find out that there really wasn't that much activity going on. A lot of what was in the calendars was doctor's appointments and work meetings and things like that, and stuff that people might want to share with a spouse, but not social things at all. And what we ended up spending the most amount of time on in that business was creating that directory of public calendars, which is something we never anticipated. I think something that anyone starting a business really needs to keep in mind is, just really be prepared for the unexpected, because there's going to be so many things that happen that you can't possibly think of. And there's going to be a lot of things that happen that you can think of too. And, that's why I think any business, any project, like doing a pre-mortem is super helpful. Like literally sit down at a table with a whiteboard. If you've got partners, get everyone in the room and write down a list of every single thing that you can think of that could possibly go wrong with your business, in the world, with the team, whatever. And think about ways to be prepared for all those things to go wrong, because inevitably some of them will go wrong, and you're going to be in a much better position to tackle those things if you have a plan, or at least some level of preparedness when things do arise, because they will.
Wow, that's powerful, Chris. The pre-morning exercise. I'm writing down. I think everybody that just heard that should rewind and hear it again, because I do.
It's a powerful.
I think it's a powerful tool. I'm gonna be straightforward with this question. Why do you think most startups fail? What would be the rookie mistakes that first timers, entrepreneurs may make? Have you identified those?
So I think, unfortunately, the biggest reason that most startups fail is no fault of the entrepreneur or the team. It is usually just wrong place, wrong time. There are so many amazing ideas that come at a time where there's not the right market fit. There may not be an appetite for fundraising. The audience may not be there. And you can sit down and come up with a list of hundreds of successful businesses where if they would have tried to launch a couple years sooner or a couple years later, they never would have made it. And on the flip side of that, you can think of businesses that failed that if they would have came a little sooner, a little later, circumstances would have been a little different. They would have been a big success. And that's why entrepreneurship and startups are such a big risk, because most of what happens is outside of your control. That's why it's so important to get the things right that are within your control, because the second biggest reason that startups fail is the team. And it's poor leadership, it's poor hiring, it's bad culture. So even if you have perfect market fit, an amazing idea, great investors, if your team is not cohesive, if you don't have a good culture, if you're not leading with empathy and vulnerability and really pushing this team forward and operating with a growth mindset, you're going to fail. And it doesn't matter how good the idea is, how big the problem is. Without an amazing team, there's just no way to succeed.
Diving into a little bit on that, what would you like, some tricks, tips, hacks, secrets about perhaps hiring the correct team, or great leadership strategies that one can implement? Do you have?
I think from a hiring perspective, the biggest thing I've learned is, and this is really counterintuitive in an early stage startup, is you need to hire slow And when you're starting a business, you're typically moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. You want to hire quickly. You want to keep things moving forward. You've got 1,000 things to do, and you want to put bodies in seats to get things done. And temporarily, that will move the business forward. But if as a part of that process you are hiring the wrong people, that is going to catch up with you very quickly. And what you will find is, even though that curve may suggest that you've made significant progress initially, longer term, you're going to find that those bad hires are really detrimental to the team and to the culture and to the business. And you're way better off taking your time hiring the right people, getting the right people in roles, making sure that you've got people who are passionate about what they do, really bought into the mission of the business, what you're trying to solve, making sure it's somebody that really wants to work with you, and they believe in what you're doing and how you're leading and the values that you have set forth. And it is really, really worth the long-term investment, taking the time to find the right people. It is so much better to take a little bit longer and do things with the right people and do them the right way than to hurry up and have to redo them. Because nothing costs more time, more resources than stopping and starting, redoing things. And then, on the other side of that is firing as fast as possible. The second someone isn't going to work out, doing yourself and that person a favor to get them out of the organization. Because the second you have that gut feeling that things are not going to work, it's never going to go away, and it's never going to work out. And I would get that person out of the organization as fast as possible.
Wow, that's great. And real quick, also, you said stopping. You also cited how you pivoted more or less into a previous venture, the business model. Is it something that you would recommend entrepreneurs? Because sometimes you start with one business model, then you see another one that could potentially go better, and then you diversify. And I've seen lots of entrepreneurs that then they're suddenly selling lots of things at the same time, and they justify that it's flexibility and part of being a startup. How do you see that flexibility and changing? Is it recommendable or?
So that's a really risky position to be in, and it's very tempting as an entrepreneur to go down 1,000,000 different paths, because when you're starting a business and you're looking at all of these different revenue channels, it's really easy to say, oh, well, there's 50 things we can do and they can all make money, and collectively this is going to be a really great business. But I think one of the most detrimental things you can do early on is losing focus. And every single time you branch out, you go down another path, you are spreading your resources thinner and thinner, which means whatever the core of your business is getting less and less attention and fewer resources deployed towards it, which means ultimately whatever that core product is not going to be as strong. So, what I would say when it comes to pivoting needs to be done out of necessity, not because it feels like there's another opportunity to chase after. Pivoting needs to be done because the original opportunity, the original idea has been proven to be unviable. And I would only pivot in a situation where you're giving up on one idea to focus all of your time, energy, and resources on a new idea that you believe is really going to be that home run. Not to go down, 10 paths where you think something's going to hit, because you can almost guarantee if you're spreading all of your time and limited resources across 10 different things, none of those things is going to work because none of them are getting the attention that they need.
Magic, Chris. Thanks for those advices. Moving forward, linking with this previous question, StockX, what was the initial roadmap? Did you pivot at any time? And also, I would like to do a second question. Let's hear them individually. That's great. What were your personal ambitions when founding StockX? Was it like a personal purpose? Did you envision this was going to be this huge? Did you want to change the world? Like, how was those personal ambitions when you were starting?
Yeah, so StockX was really about solving a problem, and StockX actually came about because of Upto, and we were in the process of getting acquired by Yahoo, and our biggest investor, who is based in Detroit, and we're based in Detroit, at the 11th hour talked us out of the deal because we were ready to move to California. We were going to leave Detroit, and he, essentially talked us into staying, and that is how StockX started. And we had ran another startup for about 4.5 years. Didn't really have another idea, but there was this loose idea that was floated around about applying stock market mechanics to secondary retail. In the beginning, we weren't even sure that we were going to do sneakers. We talked about sneakers, streetwear, wine, watches, collectible cars, trading cards, limited edition art prints, basically anything that sold for a premium on the secondary market, we were looking at. And the problem we were really trying to solve was looking at secondary markets and where secondary markets essentially had a gap between themselves and the stock market. And there's 3 core tenets of the stock market that we thought were really the core differentiators, which were transparency, authenticity, and anonymity. And when you buy a share of stock, you know exactly what the last person paid for it. You have no doubt that it's real. And these things are, what really sets the stock market apart. And we had this thought, like, what if we could apply these same tenets to a retail market? And, eventually landed on sneakers because 70% of the secondary sneaker market was brand new in the box. Meaning we didn't have to worry about condition grading, we didn't have to deal with used shoes, we could just go after that 70% and capture that part of the market, which also meant we could have a single product page. We didn't have to have multiple product pages showing different photos. We could have if it's brand new in the box, there's a single product photo for everything. And that was all about the vision to really streamline the process. Because at the time, like if you were going on a site like eBay, you could search for a product and you might get thousands of listings for the same product, and you'd have to sort through and check out condition, look at different prices, look at shipping prices. We really wanted to consolidate all of that. And that was really where the idea for StockX came from.
That's awesome. I would like to ask you also 2 side questions. The key ingredients you think or you have identified to make a global brand or the global company, and how was that process of getting your first 1,000 customers? young entrepreneurs who are starting. So are they different? You need to think maybe different, or are they aligned and the same?
So, I'll start with the global brand question first. I think the most important component to building a successful global brand is, being hyper focused on cultural differences and nuance. Business and culture are different in every single part of the world. And, without having a understanding of that and without hiring the right people who are on the ground in those markets, it's going to be incredibly difficult to succeed. Even from a marketing perspective, there is slang that you'll use in marketing creative that applies to one country that doesn't apply to another. Even could be both English-speaking countries, and the same words will mean entirely different things. Which products are considered cool or hype or trendy will be entirely different geographically. And some of that even gets pretty hyper local, where in the US, things that are cool in LA are different than things that are cool in New York. And I think to scale nationally and globally, you really need to have your finger on the pulse of what's going on and really understand that. And part of that is having people on your team that can help understand that and really keep everything you're doing aligned with those goals. And then, to the first 1,000 customers question, it's not much different than the first 100 customers. And it's kind of, it's figuring out what works and what doesn't work and what connects with people. And, essentially it's figuring out how you're going to reach people, and, whether that's through social or paid social or, pay-per-click marketing or, partnerships, campaigns, and it's going to be different for every business because your customers are going to be in different spots. But it's, in the beginning, it's experimenting, and you're kind of figuring out, okay, we got, maybe 10 customers came from this channel and 20 came from this one, and then, the rest we didn't really get anything. And then you kind of take your efforts and you really focus on those two channels that did well the first time around, and maybe you get 100 customers, and then maybe you get like a little more granular and test some different creative, and things will start to grow. The first 1,000 is, that's the easiest part. Getting them to come back and getting that group of customers to grow, that's where it starts getting tricky, because it's no longer about just completing that sale. It's about building loyalty, because now you've got customers that you want to come back. You want customers who are leaving good reviews and saying positive things to their friends. And this is when building customer relationships and brand and really great experience starts to come in, because no matter how hard you worked to bring on those 1,000 customers, you can destroy that very quickly with a bad experience or a bad customer experience or bad communication or whatever it is. So it's all about that cycle. The second you have them in the door, that's when the hard work comes, because you really need to work hard to keep them in in your brand's ecosystem. You want to, essentially build loyalty, ambassadorship, and that's extremely difficult.
It's awesome. Taking notes and having this piece of content is great. So of course you're from Detroit. All your ventures, and I think based on Detroit also. So it's quite curious. What do you think of Detroit? Is there like a network effect? Why is it like a magnetic area for business creation? And what are your general opinions on locations like Silicon Valley, or for example here in Spain, lots of entrepreneurs go to Dubai or Singapore, like why Detroit, and how do you envision Detroit in comparison to other hot areas for entrepreneurship?
Well, I think, places that are having success in entrepreneurship have a few things in common. One, it's culture, it's a mindset. Detroit is a place that has always been a very hardworking city, very down to earth, blue collar, gritty mentality, and it's really part of the culture and who people in Detroit are, and it's part of the identity. And you pair that with curiosity and resourcefulness and some decent capital resources, which I think is important. And then you do have the network effect, where you have a lot of people who are interested in building businesses and helping others succeed. And I think any of the places that you named where you have these kind of successful entrepreneurship cores, you see a lot of the same things, but like the network effect is the biggest part of it. And no one is going to accomplish anything in a vacuum. Nobody's going to do anything alone. And having a network and friends and resources and people you can lean on is extremely important and critical to succeed. And fortunately, Detroit has a really amazing community, and a really small community, where everybody who's starting a company kind of knows everybody else, and it feels very close-knit and supportive, and it's just really great to be here.
It's awesome. Have it on my checklist to visit. And now I also want to talk about, which when I was doing the due diligence about your life, I was very impressed that you decided to go back to study. So you come from so I think there's like, it's you and probably Brian Chesky, like the co-founder of Airbnb, who are like design co-founders of huge companies and like predicate on the importance of graphic design. So my two questions are, what similarities do you see in design and business? What do you think can be compatible for young entrepreneurs who come from that background, who wish to learn from that background? And then the other one is like, wow, you build this huge ventures, you have all this experience, why go back to study,
So I think there is such a strong parallel between design and business. And one, they operate very similarly from a problem-solving perspective, and I think a lot of times design is viewed as this creative thing, or making pretty pictures, and certainly the aesthetic side of it is a big part of it, but design is really a problem-solving discipline. Design is a way of looking at things in a creative way and coming up with solutions that have never been thought of before. And design is all around us. Every single thing we look at, we touch, every single object in our lives has been designed. And when you think about solving problems in business, trying to do things better way, approaching things from a new perspective. That's exactly what design is all about. And to your second question, going back to school is really just about continuous learning. And for me, it was a really awesome opportunity to have a change of environment, to really focus on experimentation, exploration, and work with like-minded people for a couple years, and really just embrace the fact that we have to be lifelong learners. And I certainly consider myself a lifelong learner, and I realize that of all of the things that can be known, I'd be lucky to know 0.1% of them. But to me, it's just really important for growth and becoming a better leader and entrepreneur and designer. And I think learning and education are such a critical part of that.
It's awesome. That makes complete sense. So briefly, what do you think is the single most important thing, like every successful business you have, and the same goes for what's the single most important thing every successful entrepreneur should have?
I think they go hand in hand. So every successful business needs a good culture, and that often comes from the founders, from the leaders. I think that's absolutely critical. And then specifically from a founder perspective, persistence is really key, and discipline. There are going to be so many days that are incredibly difficult, and it is going to be so much easier to quit than to move forward. But I really think like the biggest difference between the entrepreneurs that succeed and the ones that fail are the ones that just try one more time. They decide to get up, to be persistent, to be really dedicated to their idea. And often the difference between someone who fails and someone who succeeds is really the person who succeeded just tried one more time. And I think that's the biggest differentiator.
It's awesome. Like, I envision that Titanic's there in the boat until it like, and you need to keep on trying. So yeah, we're almost finishing. I wanted to ask you about your present venture, Art Club. What's it about? Can you give us a little insights?
Yeah, so Art Club is a marketplace and community for artists and collectors, and what we're really trying to do is provide a place where artists can sell and market their work, specifically emerging artists, and where collectors can find work that one is within a reasonable price point, and we're really trying to build out tools for people to learn how to collect art, to figure out what their style is, to figure out which emerging artist is going to be the next best investment. And a big part of that is building a community on top of it, using image recognition to authenticate art, taking a much lower fee than artists are paying to galleries today, which is makes it very difficult for them to make a living. And then also creating some educational components for artists around how to market their art, how to price their art, all these things that art school really doesn't do a good job of covering, or in most cases doesn't cover at all. We're hoping to solve for all of those things.
That's awesome, Chris. I think it seems like you connected all the dots, and it has all your essence. Art Club. I'll put in the link in the bio also. And three small fun questions, and then we end. So if you could have a dinner with any figure, historical figure, dead or alive in history of mankind, who would it be and why?
Oh, that's a good one. I'd have to go with Napoleon.
Nice.
I think just from a military strategy perspective, I would love to pick his brain on decisions that he made, and hear more about the context of what was going on in the world at that time. And I think it'd just be super fascinating to hear those things from his perspective.
That's great. Now, if you could have any memorabilia or collectible piece of any historical figure, dead or alive, sports, entrepreneurship, history, what would it be?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, the American flag that's on the moon would be pretty cool to have.
That's awesome. Then
I wouldn't want to remove it from the moon, but
if you could have access to any calendar of any figure, what kind of activity would you want to jump in? Like perhaps golf with Napoleon, and like if you could jump into access of any activity with any figure or person or situation.
One person?
Or a situation, a conglomerate of persons, perhaps.
I don't know. I feel like if I could go like go-karting with like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, like Zuckerberg, like I would love to see guys like that out of their comfort zone. I think that'd be fun.
A competitive.
It's like just like any activity that you wouldn't imagine them doing, I think would be a
But that
blast.
has like the competition component.
Mm-hmm.
And just to finish out, I know you know your venture. So what's that one piece of art history that you would want to have, or
Oh, like if I could have any piece in the world?
any piece?
I don't think I can pick one. It's hard because it changes. It's like asking favorite color. It changes every day.
Of course,
Yeah,
I get it.
it's like
Thank
it's
you
so
very much,
mood-based.
Chris. I wanted to end because
Thank
I know
you.
we're on a tight time. One last thing from you, a quote, small speech, maybe it's a word for young entrepreneurs, Spanish entrepreneurs who are listening to us. What would you be that one piece of advice you would give an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I'm just going back to what I said earlier. It's discipline. Um, Discipline is everything, and it has to come from you. When you're an entrepreneur, no one else is going to be pushing you to get up in the morning and to work hard, and you got to be able to push yourself. That's the most critical component.
Love it. Discipline. Keep moving forward. Thank you very much, Chris, for your valuable time, for giving us all this amazing insight, secrets, hacks, and valuable lessons for this Spanish community. And I hope to see you soon, or maybe we can all go to Detroit and see the magic happening there. Thank
That
you very
sounds
much.
great. I'd love to show you around.